So we continue working on the symmetrical English, and there is another plan we have to cover in this analysis. And yeah, let's go to the main position. This is that position we want to study, and we also know we can reach this Botvinnik setup using other move orders. We saw what happens if black plays with e5. We know that d6 followed by knight f6 is like the classical approach. He can play knight f6 first, and then at some point he's going to play with d6. So that is basically the same. And the other scheme black can play is e6 in this position. So by playing this, he wants to develop the knight to e7, he wants to keep this diagonal open, and by having the pawn on e6, he also stops knight d5. It's like he has a positional advantage here because he can jump to d4, whereas white, he cannot jump to d5. But with that said, as white, we have more space, and that is one of the things we'll use to put pressure to our opponent. So this is the main move order. The game we'll analyze now starts with a different move order. And by the way, the game in question is Bachmann against Darcil. You'll find this on the database you have with this course. So let's see. Here black starts with this move and white plays knight c3. Of course, if you are a d4 player, you can just play d4 here, but white wanted to play the English, so knight c3, and suddenly black plays this move. Well, he can also play this, and then we just play this move. He can also play e5, and then, well, we can basically play a line we saw on the first chapter, I think, where black plays e5. Should be something like this, d3, knight c6, knight f3. You probably remember this from the first chapter. Black, apart from playing a quick d5 or a5, he can also switch to the fianchetto, and that is more like a King's Indian setup. Well, he can do so, but then we just play standard moves and we get a good position. So move orders, we have a lot of them, but eventually we get a comfortable position for white. As long as we follow the plans, as long as we know what we are doing, then we are just fine. And here black, he was tricky in his move order. Started with g6, and then he transposes to asymmetrical English. But we just play this, and eventually we have the position we want to play, the Botvinnik setup. And okay, here he plays with e6. This is the line we want to focus on. Knight to e2, knight e7, and here white played d3. We can also castle. I don't think there is a huge difference with the move order. I mean, we play d3. This is a move we have to play at some point, and the same goes for this move. So d3. Black here decides to play d6 and rook b1. As we know, and we saw this in the previous videos, in this line we mix both kingside and queenside expansion. Here we can try playing in the center, we can try attacking on the king side, but we also have the queenside plan of rook b1, a3, and b4. And rook b1, this move is great because we get out of this diagonal. So here black plays b6, And I think this move is okay. I mean, if black knows, if he played the asymmetrical English before, then he knows b6 is a good option for him. He can also castle. Of course he can castle. But then, well, first I can play a3. And again, he has to allow this move. Maybe he has to play b6. If he plays a move like a5, then yes, he is stopping b4, but then he's got an awful hole on the queen side, and we can try exploiting this in the long run. So, I mean, a5 is playable, but from that positional point of view, this cannot be recommended. I can just castle. Sure, he can play e5, he can continue his development, but we have the better position, even if we end up playing a symmetrical position on the king side. On the queen side, these weaknesses are going to tell. I mean, this a5, the fact we'll have knight b5 at some point, this is that position we are looking for. I mean, all the action on the king side, we can try playing f4, we have great pieces, but the slight difference is on the queen side. Imagine we play an endgame, we trade everything off, then that d6 pawn is weak, we also have the b4 break on the queen side. Of course, f4 is another break we have to consider, and I actually love these symmetrical positions because if we start the action like this, if black decides to activate that position too much, then we are playing white. I mean, we are supposed to have better pieces and more development, so this is no exception, and we have that plus the queen side weaknesses. And by the way, I know I'm insisting a bit on this concept, but I'm not concerned if he plays f5, because my position as white is super solid. It's like a rock. Everything is well protected. I don't mind if he starts attacking because he doesn't have much. And again, my position is solid as white. As long as you have a solid foundation, then you're safe. So, as we know, in these lines, okay, d3, d6, rook b1, we have a lot of possible moves. There's no point in analyzing move by move here, but what we can do is analyze the plans. And this line, it was tough for me to understand at first, but when I saw this game, I got a better feeling of this line. I mean, initially I thought this was just equal, but then after analyzing this game, which was played the previous year, so it is a recent game, after analyzing this game, I started thinking maybe white has a slight edge in this line. So, okay, b6, black, well, he allows a3 and b4, but c5 is well protected, so we don't have any threats on the queen side, and he also wants to develop his bishop somewhere, so that is why b6 is good. Here white played bishop e3, and black plays e5. Well, this bishop e3 is tricky already because if he castles, then we play d4 and we have a huge positional advantage already. Once we achieve this move, it's like we get rid of the only weakness we have in that position, which is the d4 square. And yeah, this is like Sicilian, where we play d4, black usually has to take, and well, d6 is a weakness. We have more space, we have this Maroczy bind set up as white. I mean, it's not like black is losing, but he's suffering a bit on the queen side and on the d file, to be more specific. So once we play bishop e3, black usually tries stopping the d4 advance. In order to do so, he's got two moves, e5 or knight to d4. We'll see something like this happening in the game, but yeah, in the game we see e5 is the main move, but knight d4. Here we also understand why rook b1 and b4 is a great plan. Believe it or not, once we play rook b1 and b4, we are also fighting against his knight on d4. And, well, this makes sense because we are attacking one of the defenders of knight d4, and we also get out of this diagonal. If, for instance, well, if black takes, then he's in bad shape because he loses the knight on d4. Sure, he takes on c3, but we end up having a stronger center, and well, here I can also consider a move like knight b5, nice in-between move, attacking his bishop, and then, well, this speaks for itself. We have a great advantage here. We are probably winning material. So again, this rook b1 is great because we fight against his knight d4, and here we also start understanding why white was delaying this move and why he played rook b1 first. I know the player playing white here, Bachmann, strong grandmaster from South America. I played against him once and he played me the English, so I'm pretty sure he knows what he's doing in this game. I can tell you that. And this plan looks great. And I can castle very soon. So, okay, b4. This is an analysis, by the way. In the game, we see black playing e5, but yeah, I found this variation myself. He can castle, then we can play this e5. Little by little, we start understanding what's going on. We want to remove both d6 plus c5, and if we remove those, then knight d4 is also weaker. So rook b8, we take on d6, queen takes, knight e4. This is, as you can see, pretty straightforward. Queen c7, we take. I mean, knight d4 is not that powerful anymore. I mean, the knight on d4 is not stable. Rook takes, queen takes. Well, here we cannot take on c5 yet. There's queen b4 check. But what we can do is castle. We attack on c5. We are also likely to take on d4. And, well, the d4 square is no longer a hole. And in this position, white has an advantage. We have stuff going on the queen side. If he plays a move like f5, he's definitely weakening his position, and even if he plays h6, that pawn is protected, but we have better pieces and his bishop is only protecting pawns. It's not like that bishop is powerful, and again, we have play on the queen side, we have this passer. Slight advantage for white. We are not winning, but it is good to have a slight advantage anyways. So this line, I mean, it's too specific, but I think it helps us understand the idea of our opening choice. We play the Budvinnik setup, we allow knight d4, but we have ways of dealing with this. And I love this variation because we eliminate both d6 and c5, and The plan behind this is to make this knight on d4 weaker, to weaken this knight on d4. So, very precise plan by white. Usually when you see games, you see white castling here, and this is of course good, but now we see it more deeply, and we understand that d3, rook b1, bishop e3, we can play this first, and then if he plays knight d4, we are ready to play b4, and again, put pressure on that knight. So, okay, let's see how this game was. Bishop e3. Black didn't play knight d4, he plays e5, and again, when he plays e5, we are looking at this symmetrical position where white has an extra tempo. I mean, worst case scenario, we are talking about complete equality, but I mean, that is the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, we have an advantage as white because of the first move. So, okay, here he decides to play a3. Black doesn't fall for that positional trap, and that would be playing a5. I mean, it's not, we don't have any traps here, but I'm just saying, if he plays a5, he has a lot of weaknesses, so he just allows b4 and plays this. We castle, and here black plays rook to b8. Well, he can castle too. Eventually, I got the feeling we are going to transpose. White plays b4. Black gets his pieces out. Queen d2. Very simple chess by white. And this is our dreaming position. We got all our pieces out. We got some queenside space. And of course, our idea is to play f4 at some point. So, black castles here, and in this position, I mean, here is where we have to start playing deep moves. Of course, we can play f4, I mean, it is a possibility. Maybe we can play something like king h1. The only move I wouldn't play yet is h3. Usually this move is good because we plan this plus f4, but we have to be extremely careful not to allow stuff like this. I mean, if we take, then we lose the queen, but I mean, in other situations, h3, king h2, and f4, this is great looking, but in this specific position, it doesn't look great because of the check. We have all sorts of possibilities. Maybe since the queen side is a bit closed, we can consider this and then we play f4. I mean, if we start talking about plans, we have a lot. I mean, we have endless plans for white. But now if we want to talk about good plans, then we have a few. Having this knight on d4, we think about eliminating this knight. Obviously we cannot play this because we lose a piece, but maybe bishop takes is better looking, but the truth is, no matter how black retakes here, he's got the bishop pair, and for the time being, this trade, I think it's just helping black. Not a huge advantage for him, but one day this bishop is gonna tell the other bishop too. So, I mean, we have to understand that in this line, that knight on d4 is not that powerful. It looks great, sure, but it's not doing much. And again, if we start playing moves like this, one day we can try eliminating the basis of knight d4, and then this knight on d4 is going to be weak. So, in this position, after black castles, here we see a deep move by white, b5. And You probably remember that in one of the first chapters in the Symmetrical English, one of the first chapters we had, we saw a game played by Seta1 where he played b5 too. And this move is tough to understand. This is old strategy. Once we play b5, we close the b file. We are no longer attacking the pawn on c5, but we are thinking like long term, and first we eliminate this square. He cannot play something like this. In the future we can try advancing on the queen side, and let me just play whatever. I just want to point out what I'm trying to say. You probably remember this game we saw by Seta1. Here, by the way, he's got knight b3. But I'm pretty sure you remember this game where he played queen b2. It's not the same position, but the plan I'm doing as white is basically the same. And having this pawn on b5 is painful for black. I mean, he doesn't have any room for maneuvers on the queen side, whereas if we happen to play an endgame, this b6 pawn is a clear target. So again, this b5 move is quite deep, and this is a move you wouldn't play unless you know the plan, unless you saw games previously. So b5, I love this move, and if you want to understand this plan more, I recommend reanalyzing the game I'm talking about, the game Seta1 played, and you can find this on one of the first chapters of this Symmetrical English. In this game, black decides to play f5, and I totally understand this move. What else, right? If he doesn't play f5, well, I'll continue my queenside plan. I can also consider playing f4. If he takes, well, this is a move he doesn't want to play because that knight on d4 is powerful, and now he's trading it, so this is also better for white because we have more space. Simple. So f5, I mean, it's almost impossible to blame black for playing this move, and here the game changes a lot. White takes on f5. I have another move here which I strongly recommend, which is bishop here. Now he has to make a decision. Maybe he can play knight e6, but then the knight is far away from the action. I can simply take, and now we are the ones with a powerful knight on d5. Yes, he can play queen d8, and now I like taking. Suddenly I have a powerful bishop, and then this position, I mean, black, he's got the bishop pair, yes, but his bishop on d7 is not special at all. We have powerful knights, both. I mean, if he takes on f4, then his king side is a disaster, and most of our pieces are doing something, so this position, I think white has already a clear advantage. And, well, if he plays something else, we can keep bringing our pieces to the center, and again, it is tough for black to coordinate his pieces. As you can see, the rook on b8 cannot join the game yet. Maybe he has to play a move like bishop e8, and, well, white has pressure. I'm not saying white is winning, I'm not saying we have a clear advantage, but one thing is for sure, our pieces are well placed, and black, it is easier for black to make a mistake. I mean, these moves he's playing. And by the way, I'm following the Ancients moves. These are not natural moves. It's super easy for black to make a mistake. And even if he plays the most accurate moves, the Ancients are saying white is better. And I agree because of the positional pluses we have here. If he takes, then again his position is a disaster, basically his pawn structure, and he is full of holes, as you can see. If he doesn't take, I mean if he advances, he loses a pawn, and if he doesn't touch his pawns, well, he has to be considering this f takes e5 the entire game. And again, his moves are not easy at all. This is what I'm looking for when I play the English. Positions that are easier to play for me. It is impossible to get a winning advantage, but if we get positions which are easy to play for us and tough to play for our opponents, that's all I'm asking for, even if the positions in question are equal. This might be equal for that computer. In fact, it is a slight advantage for white, but let's say this is equal. Well, it's an equality that is easier to play as white. And that's, as I was saying, all I'm asking for. You can check the entire game on the database. This is the improvement I propose. In the game, we see white took on f5, and then he played this, and he eventually got this knight on d5. He made this trade, which is something to remember, taking on e7, I mean this bishop g5, taking on e7, and then jumping to d5, and I think white won this game because he was dominating on both sides of the board, and because my minor pieces are better than his. So again, this game is just one game but full of plans, and I think if you study this game together with the other games we have in this chapter, then you'll have a great understanding of these lines. And before we close, pay attention to this move order, because it is not a huge difference, but if you play this first, bishop e3, rook b1, and you delay castle, then his knight d4 is not that powerful. This is what we saw here. The line I propose, I found this myself. You won't find games with this specific position, but it is a good example of what could happen in this line. So, with all these plans, I hope you have a good understanding of this line. That's all for this video. I hope you found this useful. I hope you could learn something. And of course, I want to see you guys in my next chapters. Thank you.